echoes in the dust. The ocean winds whispered through the thick jungle canopy as the helicopter disappeared into the distance, leaving Dr. Eliot Vance alone on the mossy landing pad of Isla Reclusa. He stood motionless, the roar of rotors fading into memory, his weathered hands gripping the strap of his pack. The scent of damp earth and ancient life filled his lungs. It had been 10 years since he'd last set foot here. 10 long years since Project Genesis, the world's most ambitious scientific leap, brought dinosaurs back from extinction, and equally long since that leap turned into a stumble off a moral cliff. Eliot had been the mind behind it all, the resurrector, the dreamer, and, in the eyes of many, the destroyer. As he walked the overgrown trail to the old field labs, every step sank deeper into regret. The jungle had reclaimed much of the once sterile complex. Ivy climbed the broken windows, vines tangled in satellite dishes, and birds nested in the steel beams. Nature had won here, and oddly, Eliot took comfort in that. He wasn't here for redemption. That ship had sailed the moment Genesis Corp repurposed his research into military-grade bioassets. He was here for silence, for atonement, maybe even for the ghosts. He dropped his pack in the dusty lab and ventured toward the observation field. Once, this was a place of awe, where young raptors darted in controlled packs and long-necked sauropods cast shadows over the jungle. Now it was silent, until he heard it, a deep, low grunt. He froze, heart skipping. It came again, pain-weary. Eliot followed the sound, brushing aside tall grass and broken branches until he found her. A Triceratops. She lay in a clearing, sides heaving, a gash along her flank crusted with blood and flies. One massive horn was chipped, and her eyes, wide, glassy, frightened, fixed on him. For a moment, Eliot forgot to breathe. She was magnificent, even injured. Her hide shimmered with scales of deep slate and earthen brown. Muscles rippled beneath the skin with every breath, and her three-pronged crown, though damaged, was a testament to nature's artistry. He raised his hands slowly. "Hey, easy," he whispered. "I'm not here to hurt you." She snorted, her heavy head twitching. Eliot noticed her leg, trapped beneath a fallen branch. He didn't call for backup. He didn't reach for sedatives or tranquilizer darts. He just sat, cross-legged, 10 feet away in the warm grass. He talked to her about the island, about the project, about his daughter, Mira, how she had once begged him to make a dino friend for her. She had died 2 years before the first egg hatched. He'd named the first Triceratops after her. But this one wasn't her. Or maybe she was. The great creature exhaled, eyes softening. Minutes passed, then an hour. Slowly, Eliot edged forward, talking gently, until he reached the branch pinning her leg. With effort and groans of age, he pushed it away. She flinched, but didn't charge. He tore open his medkit and applied disinfectant to the wound, humming the lullaby Mira loved. Her breathing steadied. For the first time in years, Eliot felt something stir inside him. Not pride, not pain, wonder. He stayed with her into the evening, watching the sky burn orange over the canopy. She didn't move much, only shifted enough to lean against a tree. But when he rose to leave, she let out a low, gentle sound, somewhere between a sigh and a hum. It was a call. He turned back and knelt beside her, resting his hand on her massive paw. The skin was rough but warm, alive, trusting. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for everything." Tears welled in his eyes as he realized what this meant. She wasn't just a beast. She wasn't a product. She wasn't even a miracle. She was a reminder. That life, real life, was never meant to be patented or owned. He stayed beside her as the stars blinked awake above them. In that quiet moment, beneath ancient trees and a sky unchanged by time, something unspoken passed between man and beast. A promise. The Accord begins. Morning came soft and golden over Isla Reclusa. The dew clung to broad leaves, and bird calls echoed through the trees. Eliot Vance sat in the grass near the resting Triceratops, sipping lukewarm coffee from a dented thermos. Mira, he had officially decided to call her that, was still healing Her massive body nestled against a patch of tall ferns. Her breathing was calm now, and her eyes tracked him with something more than instinct. Recognition. It had been 3 weeks since he first found her, wounded and alone. In that time, he'd brought her food, cleaned her wound, and kept her company. He read aloud from old field journals, whistled lullabies, and sometimes just sat in silence. She seemed to prefer the quiet. No longer flinching, no longer wary, she even allowed him to rest against her side. She was the only living thing Eliot had connected with in years. But that morning, the peace shattered. A sharp rustle of foliage, too controlled to be wind, pulled Eliot out of his thoughts. He stood quickly, heart racing, instinctively shielding Mira with his body. From the trees emerged a young woman, mid-20s, wearing an old ranger's vest, a tablet in one hand, and a satchel slung across her shoulder. She froze when she saw them, man and dinosaur together like something out of myth. Eliot narrowed his eyes. "You're not supposed to be here. I could say the same for you," she replied, her voice cautious but curious. "Ray Liao, volunteer ecologist. I've been monitoring this sector for heat signatures. You've been off-grid for days." Ray stepped forward slightly, breaking through her guarded tone. "She's calm, docile. Is she sedated?" "No," Eliot said, brushing his hand gently across Mira's thick skin. "She trusts me." Ray lowered her tablet. "That's not supposed to be possible. Neither was bringing her back," Eliot replied. "And yet, here she is." For a moment, silence settled between them, pierced only by the distant call of a pterosaur. Then Ray knelt cautiously, marveling at the creature before her. "You named her Mira," he said quietly. "After my daughter." Ray softened. "I read about her." "I'm sorry." Eliot nodded, the old grief flickering like a dull ember. Then Ray stood, brows furrowing. "You do know what's happening, right?" Eliot tensed. "What do you mean?" "The board sold their shares to Genesis Corporation. They're planning a purge. Clean slate. They're calling it a reset. The official language is about biocontainment risk mitigation. But we both know what that means." Eliot felt the air rush from his lungs. "They're going to kill them." Ray nodded grimly. "Within the month. They'll start with the carnivores, then the herbivores. You're looking at one of the last free creatures on this island." He looked at Mira, who was now lazily chewing on a cluster of low ferns, unaware that her fate had just been signed away. "No," he whispered. "Not again." "There's still a chance," Ray said, stepping closer. "If we can prove something, anything, that shows these animals are more than just biological recreations. Behavior, intelligence, emotional depth. The board might listen, or at least the public will." Eliot shook his head. "I tried it years ago. I wrote the Jurassic Accord, a framework for ethical coexistence. They buried it. Said it was naive. Maybe it was ahead of its time," Ray said gently. "But this, what I just saw, that was real." Eliot was quiet for a long time, eyes fixed on Mira's massive form. "We have no time, no funding, no support. But we have a story," Ray insisted, "and a symbol." He looked at her, and she held up her tablet. "Let me record this. Everything. Her reactions, her routines, how she responds to you. We'll build a case. Not just scientific, human." He hesitated, then nodded. That evening, Ray returned with a solar camera rig. They filmed Mira moving closer to Eliot when he called, her eyes following his hand movements, her low, mournful coo when he stopped talking for too long. They captured all. Ray narrated quietly in the background, documenting the details. But it was Eliot's voice, gentle, remorseful, full of wonder, that told the real story. "This isn't control," he said into the camera. "This is trust, not born from fear, but from familiarity. She chose me, and I chose not to betray that choice." As the sun dipped below the treetops, Mira laid her head near Eliot's feet and let out a deep, peaceful sigh. It was the sound of an ancient heart that had found peace again. The last stand of the ancient ones. The air on Isla Reclusa had changed. It was subtle at first, a tension in the wind, the quiet absence of bird calls, the stillness of the foliage. But Eliot knew something was coming, something that didn't belong. He stood beside Mira in the clearing, Ray close by, scanning her tablet with a frown creasing her forehead. "They've deployed the first wave of drones," she muttered. "2 zones already neutralized. Carnivore sectors." Eliot's hands curled into fists. "Neutralized? That's what they're calling it now." Ray nodded grimly. "Non-lethal sedatives for public optics, but once they're unconscious, the real procedure begins. Genesis Corp won't wait for a public hearing." A deep groan echoed nearby. A brachiosaurus, likely sedated, crashing to the ground miles away. Mira twitched, lifting her massive head, snorting anxiously at the distant sound. Eliot reached up and placed his hand on her frill, voice calm but firm. "It's okay, girl. I'm here." Ray tapped the side of her camera rig, broadcasting live footage through a covert channel. She had contacts in the preservationist networks, activists, whistleblowers, a few brave journalists. They were already watching. But time was slipping. "We need to go wide," she said, eyes scanning the horizon. "The drone net will reach this sector within an hour. If we can't draw attention to her now." A sudden buzz pierced the air. Over the trees, a Genesis surveillance drone hovered into view, its lenses rotating, scanning the clearing. "Stay still," Ray hissed. Eliot didn't move. Mira let out a sharp huff and stood, massive legs shifting beneath her. Her wound had mostly healed, though a faint scar still marked her side. She stepped closer to Eliot, placing herself between him and the drone. The machine clicked. A warning tone sounded. Then, a dart fired. It missed Mira but struck the dirt nearby, hissing as it discharged. Mira flinched and let out a deep, guttural cry, part warning, part fear. Eliot didn't think. He stepped forward, hands raised high. "Do not fire," he yelled toward the drone speakers. "This is a peaceful animal. She poses no threat." The drone backed slightly, adjusting its altitude. A second drone appeared from the trees, followed by the mechanical hiss of boots, a Genesis ground team. 2 soldiers in matte armor emerged, rifles slung across their chests. Behind them, a cold-eyed supervisor approached, tablet in hand. "Dr. Eliot Vance," she said, "you are in violation of containment protocols. Step away from the specimen." "I won't," Eliot said, stepping closer to Mira. "She's not a specimen. She's a sentient, social being, and I have evidence to prove it." The woman didn't blink. "Irrelevant. Project clearance was revoked. Termination orders have been issued." "She trusts me," Eliot said, his voice cracking. "She protected me from harm. Doesn't that mean anything?" Mira shifted, letting out another low call, quieter this time. She nudged Eliot's side gently, watching the soldiers with wary eyes. She didn't run. She didn't charge. She just stood there, protective, present. The moment was silent, tense, on a knife's edge. Then Ray's voice cut through. "You're being broadcast live." The Genesis agent froze. "What?" Ray pointed to the camera, still rolling, red light blinking steadily. "Thousands are watching, right now, across 3 platforms. If you take one more step, you'll be killing a creature the world just saw express empathy." A beat passed. The supervisor glanced at her calm, then stepped back. She tapped her earpiece and muttered, "We need authorization to proceed. We got eyes on us." Eliot turned toward the camera and stepped into frame. The wind tugged at his shirt. His face was lined with age, sorrow, and hope. "My name is Dr. Eliot Vance," he said, voice firm. "This animal behind me is named Mira. She is not a lab product. She is not a monster. She is a living testament to the intelligence, memory, and emotional depth of prehistoric life." He turned and gently placed his hand on Mira's leg. "She chose not to hurt me, even when afraid, even when wounded. She stood between me and your weapons. Not out of instinct, but out of choice. If that doesn't make her worth saving, what does?" Ray slowly turned the camera to capture the full image. The elderly scientist, the ancient beast, and the heavily armed soldiers facing them in a jungle clearing. The feed exploded online. Comments, shares, outrage. A hashtag began trending. Hashtag the Jurassic Accord. Back in the clearing, Mira exhaled and sat beside Eliot, eyes half closed. She wasn't afraid anymore. Neither was he. The Jurassic Accord. It took less than 48 hours for the world to change. The footage Ray streamed of Eliot and Mira side by side, calm under threat, defying everything people believed about dinosaurs, had gone viral in minutes. By morning, international news outlets ran the story under every banner imaginable. The dinosaur that trusted a man, Mira the Triceratops, sparks global movement. Has science gone too far? Or not far enough? Protests flared outside Genesis Corp headquarters. Scientists, students, environmentalists, and ordinary families carried signs that read, "She deserves to live," and "We broke the past. Let's not destroy twice." But on the island, Eliot and Ray sat in anxious silence beside Mira, unsure of what would come next. Then, on the third day, the helicopters came. This time, not from Genesis, but from the United Nations Biodiversity Oversight Committee, accompanied by independent media, ecologists, and members of the International Ethics Tribunal. A tall woman with silver hair and an ivory UN patch approached Eliot at the field station. "Dr. Vance," she greeted calmly. "My name is Anna Salim. I'm here to evaluate the legitimacy of your claim. You will have 10 minutes to present your case." Eliot simply nodded and turned to where Mira lay under the trees. "Then let her speak for me." They didn't sedate Mira. They didn't cage her. Eliot walked toward her as he always did. Slow, steady, respectful. And Mira, in turn, stood and greeted him with a soft chuff, nudging his chest gently. The cameras captured every moment. Anna watched in silence. "Tell me," she asked Ray, "does she do that with anyone else?" "No," Ray said softly. "Only him." For the next hour, Eliot and Ray presented their recordings. Mira's behavior, her responsiveness to sound and emotion, her protective instincts. They played clips of her staying close to Eliot when drones buzzed overhead, of her cooing when he hummed his daughter's lullaby. Eliot read a section from the long-buried draft of his Jurassic Accord, and his voice trembled with restrained emotion. "We must not treat these beings as echoes of the past or tools for the future. If they breathe, if they feel, if they choose, then they deserve dignity." When the tribunal left to deliberate, Eliot stayed with Mira. He could do nothing more. That evening, the verdict came. Isla Reclusa was to be placed under international protection, designated as a sovereign biome reserve, free from private ownership or corporate exploitation. Genesis Corp was ordered to cease all operations and would face criminal investigations for biological violations. Mira would live. All of them would. Ray cried when she read the declaration. Eliot didn't. He just sat beside Mira, laid a hand on her side, and whispered, "We did it, girl. You saved us." 5 years later, the jungle hadn't changed. The canopy was still thick and wild. The air still buzzed with prehistoric life. But the observation station had grown, not into a lab or facility, but a sanctuary, a living, breathing testament to balance. Eliot, now gray and slower in step, walked a familiar trail as children from around the world followed behind, guided by Ray, now the official director of the Mira Trust Initiative. They stopped at the edge of the main valley, where the herd had gathered. "There she is," Ray whispered. Mira stood at the front of a group of young Triceratops, horns gleaming in the sun, eyes serene. She let out a deep, warm call when she saw Eliot. "She remembers him?" a small girl asked. Ray smiled. "Every day." Eliot stepped forward, and Mira walked to meet him. Their greeting was the same as always, a soft chuff, a shared breath, a hand resting on an ancient hide. He looked out at the children, then back at Mira. "We were wrong to think we were alone in our ability to care," he said aloud. She reminded us that empathy isn't a human invention. It's a universal language, older than fire, deeper than time. He knelt down, resting against her massive shoulder. "I used to believe we brought them back for science," he whispered to Ray. "But now I know we brought them back so they could teach us how to live again." Above them, banners of the new Jurassic Accord flew on solar towers, displaying a single line beneath the sanctuary's crest. Not rulers, not gods, just neighbors given a second chance. And in that clearing, where man once feared beast and beast once ran from man, peace was no longer a miracle. It was simply life.